In a crowded classroom filled with the scent of chalk dust and nervous energy sat a boy named Arav. He was 17, sharp-minded, observant, and full of potential, or so everyone said. But recently his world had become smaller, quieter. He avoided eye contact with teachers, stopped raising his hand, and flinched every time test results were handed out. Arav had failed his math exam, not just a low score, a complete fail. He had studied, he had tried. But when the paper came back red-marked and crumpled, something inside him cracked. It wasn't just the failure, it was the story that followed it. The voice that whispered, "You're not smart." The friends who gave polite smiles, the teacher's sigh, the silence at dinner. Since then, failure had become a ghost that followed him everywhere. It wasn't about math anymore, it had bled into everything. He stopped applying for competitions, stopped speaking in class, stopped dreaming. "I don't want to mess up again," he told himself. Then, one day, while helping clean out a storage room in school, Arav found a dusty old bookshelf stacked with worn-out biographies. He picked one at random, the story of a famous scientist who had once failed 3 entrance exams before changing the world. The book was falling apart, but one page was still crisp, underlined in fading ink. "Success is not the absence of failure, it's what you do after it." He read the line again, and again, and for the first time in weeks he felt something unfamiliar. Not hope, not yet, but curiosity. That evening Arav took the book home. He hid it between his textbooks, unsure why he felt the need to keep it secret. Maybe because it held something fragile, something personal. That night, under the soft light of his desk lamp, he kept reading. The scientist in the story hadn't just failed, he had been laughed at, rejected, dismissed. Yet every failure seemed to sharpen him, not break him. With each setback he learned something new, changed his approach, and kept moving. Arav sat back, the book resting on his chest. What if failure wasn't the end? What if it was the beginning? That question echoed louder than any insult his mind had thrown at him in the past few weeks. The next day at school, Arav did something small but brave. He raised his hand in math class. He didn't have the perfect answer. His voice cracked, but he spoke. The teacher nodded, corrected him gently, and moved on. No laughter, no drama, just another moment in another day. But to Arav, it was everything. That night he opened his notebook and wrote, "Today, I failed forward." He began doing it more, making small mistakes on purpose, taking small risks, collecting small stings. And each time the fear shrank a little. He started asking better questions. Not, "What if I fail?" but, "What will I learn if I do?" And for the first time, failure started to lose its power. A few days later, Arav sat alone in the school library, flipping through the same book that had sparked his shift. He reached the final chapter, where the scientist recalled his biggest breakthrough, and how it only came after his biggest mistake. The pattern was clear. Every success had been built on the back of failure, not in spite of it, because of it. Arav closed the book slowly and looked out the window. For years he had believed that failure meant he wasn't good enough, that it was a label, a sentence, a limit. But now he saw something different. Failure was feedback, not final. It didn't say, "You can't." It asked, "Will you try again?" He began to see it everywhere, in the stories of entrepreneurs, athletes, inventors. None of them had avoided failure. They had faced it, fallen with it, and grown because of it. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've carried the weight of failure too. Maybe one mistake convinced you to stop trying. Maybe you've been replaying a moment that hurt your confidence. But here's the truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the soil where success takes root. This channel isn't about avoiding setbacks. It's about finding meaning in them, learning through them, growing because of them. So if Arav's story resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe, not for perfection, but for perspective, for reminders like this, for voices that say, it's okay to fall, as long as you get back up. Because how you handle failure, that's what defines your future. Over the next few weeks, Arav's relationship with failure transformed completely. He started treating every mistake like a teacher, every setback like a lesson plan. He stopped avoiding the hard problems in class and started tackling them first, even if he got them wrong. And strangely, he began to enjoy it. He no longer feared red marks on his paper. He circled them, studied them, and wrote notes beside each one. Why did this go wrong? What can I do next time? One day he stayed after class to ask the math teacher a question, not because he needed help with homework, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. The teacher looked pleasantly surprised. "You've been changing," she said. "Not just your answers, your mindset." Arav smiled. It wasn't about being right anymore, it was about being real. He started helping a friend who had failed in English, not by giving answers, but by sharing his own story, of how failure had once held him hostage, and how it had now become his guide. People began to notice, not just the teachers, not just his friends, but Arav himself. He carried himself differently, spoke more clearly, listened more openly. He wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. He was trying to learn, and in that shift he had found something no test could measure: resilience. One afternoon, Arav was asked to speak during the school assembly. It wasn't a big event, just a few classes gathered in the hall. But for him, it was something he never imagined doing just weeks ago. He stood at the podium, hands slightly trembling, heart racing. Then, he took a breath and began. "I failed a math exam last month," he said. A quiet wave of surprise spread through the room. "And I thought that meant I was a failure, that I wasn't smart, that I wasn't enough." He paused, looking across the sea of students, some whispering, some leaning in. But I was wrong. What it actually meant was, I had something to learn, and when I started learning from it, not hiding from it, something amazing happened. I started to grow. He went on to share how failure had become his turning point, not his end, and how each time he chose to face it instead of fear it, he reclaimed a little more of his confidence. When he finished, the room was silent, not out of judgment, but because something had landed. Arav walked off stage, not as someone who had conquered failure, but as someone who had made peace with it, who had chosen to meet it head-on and invite others to do the same. Later that evening, he wrote one final note in his journal. "Success didn't begin when I passed. It began when I failed and didn't stop." One evening, Arav sat on the rooftop of his home, the stars scattered above him like quiet witnesses to his journey. A gentle breeze moved through the air, and for the first time in a long while, he wasn't carrying the weight of failure. He was carrying its lesson. He realized something important. Not all success comes from victory. Some of the strongest, deepest kinds of success grow from the willingness to continue after everything in you says, give up. He had come to understand that failing a test didn't mean he was a failure. It meant he was human. It meant he had tried. And trying, even when the odds are against you, even when your confidence is shaken, that's where character is built. That's where strength is formed. Now when Arav looked at challenges ahead, he didn't feel afraid. He felt ready. Not because he knew he would win, but because he knew he could survive, even when he didn't. He had become someone who didn't run from hard things, someone who knew how to fall and get back up, again and again. And now, dear listener, before the story closes, one question remains for you. If your next failure could lead to your greatest growth, would you still be afraid to begin?